Why, hello there, you're listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast. If it's your first time, welcome to the club. This is a show all about Paris, all about France, hosted by me, Oliver G, and brought to you by the lovely Patreon members. Where at patreon.com/the Eiffel Tower, you can unlock a bunch of extra things like the transcript for this very episode, like my huge PDF guide to Paris, help you plan your next trip, and live videos and much more. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about jazz. And the reason I am revisiting this topic is because it's one of those questions. There are two questions I get rather often. They kind of just crop up every now and again. One is, can you do something about jazz? And the other is, can you do something about how to visit Paris for children? Which we'll get back to at another point. And the reason I always sort of put these off is because I feel like they're a bit almost divisive. Like I feel like you either like jazz or you don't, and you either have children or you don't. But look, this week was a good one to tackle jazz, I figured, because we had some visitors in town who were really into it, and I found myself going to some jazz clubs. And one of them is particularly worth talking about because I was invited there by the guest on today's show, Alex Freiman. He sent me a message. He said, Oliver, you got to come check this out. There's a cool thing going on. He was involved in organizing it. It's jazz meets chess at the same time, and yet not at the same time. I don't want you to imagine people playing jazz and chess, taking on each other, trying to checkmate each other with a double bass and a saxophone. No, it's a chess club in the Saint-Germain-des-Prés area, where a lot of people are playing chess, but at the same time, you can go and watch jazz. It's a place called the Blitz Society. If you want to find it for yourself, it is in the 6th arrondissement on Rue Sabot, Rue du Sabot. He said, come and check this out. There's been a big lack of live jazz in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and he says, I want to try and bring back this golden era of jazz in Paris from the 1950s, while at the same time helping the local jazz community have a chance to play, a spot to play in this beautiful venue. So I went along, and it was really cool. I'm by no means the world's biggest fan of jazz, but I sat at that table in this old half-timbered interior, exposed beams, beautiful Paris bar. I even played chess, actually, and I sat there. I had seats right at the front, and I really enjoyed it. So if you're looking for an experience like that, for some jazz, I can recommend it. Every other Thursday, I think they play. Blitz Society is the name of the bar. Another place I went during this week with our visitors was the Caveau des Oubliettes, which is long established. You've probably heard of it. You might have even been there before. But look, it's another good place to go for jazz. And also the famous Caveau de la Huchette, which is around the corner from both of these places. It's where, if you've seen La La Land, there's a scene set in there. And that one I talked about during the countdown season. It's sort of a mix of music, but people are dancing down there like Lindy Hop, that kind of thing. That's also a cool vibe. But if you want the raw jazz experience with a little chess thrown in, Blitz Society. Now, all this to say, Alex Freiman, who incidentally also works at the Shakespeare and Company bookshop, he was on the show a while back talking about jazz in Paris, what it all means, trying to give us a sort of intro to it and some places to listen. So we're going to revisit his chat, which also covered topics like the Notre Dame fire, which he was standing right there for it, obviously working in the bookshop, and a whole lot more. Also, if you're coming to our Christmas party December 2nd, Alex will be playing jazz there. He's one of our not so mysterious mystery guests anymore now that I've said it, but he'll be there along with some other familiar musicians. If you're a Patreon member, you've got your invite. If not, why not join up just to visit the party? We'll be doing a live stream of some of this music during the evening and sharing it with Patreon members. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's get into some jazz. And I'll be back at the end of the episode with some more information. Enjoy! I want to talk to you a little bit about the history, because I know jazz goes a way back in Paris, especially with an American influence there. And I also want to talk to you about currently jazz, where there's probably a lot of people wondering where to go watch some good jazz in Paris. But how much do you know when it comes to that sort of cross history between America and Paris when it comes to jazz?
A little bit. I mean, I have to say that for some reason, and I'm not the only person to say that, definitely, is that to me, after a certain point in my life, maybe, after my teens, discovering, rock and roll and everything, and, the favorite bands like Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and everything, the great musicians as Carlos Santana and so many other, but people who really, like when you're a bit naive about music, it just hits you as being powerful. But then you go deeper and deeper, and you see the roots of all of these people. I mean, lies in the jazz, and so digging, you start to know about jazz musicians that weren't around at all. I have no idea what jazz was when I was a teenager, And when I started to discover, to kind of unravel the thread of what it was, it went deeper and deeper, and just, the most, at the beginning, the complex music, some things you don't really get, and people tell you that it's what you should be listening to, so you listen to it, and some things hit you really deeply, and then you dig, and then you understand that the power of what it was in the 1940s and 30s, of course, as well, and of Afro-American jazz musicians, the influence of don't get me started on this, because this is something I've been thinking about so much, and the influence on the world, and the cultural aspect, and the power of what it is, and how I think America redesigned the world in a way through also that Afro-American music. That's my really own take on it. But and I think I forgot the initial question.
How the countries came together.
I'm a master of digression.
But no, that's all right. I like it. What about today? I think if you imagine you're talking to someone
today
in America or Australia who wants to come to Paris, listen to a little bit of jazz, is it hard to find? Are there places to begin?
There's a vibrant jazz scene in Paris. You've got some great venues like the Duc de Lombard and Sunset Sunside, and then these are the two clubs, and you got the Baiser Salé, which is also on the same street on Rue des Lombards, which is kind of the dead center of the city, and in a way the dead center of jazz. Then you got the New Morning, and then you got all kinds of things. So there are a lot of opportunities to listen to jazz, and then there are all these places that pop up and pop out, where jazz musicians find a gig, and then they want to have a residency. They want to find a home for whatever music they're playing, and then it's hard to tell to people where to go, because they happen over the span of maybe, if you're lucky, 1 year, 2 years,
right?
And then something happens, the neighbors complain and so forth.
Right, but those four that you said, they're pretty standard, famous places. I think I heard Prince played in the New Morning.
Prince. Well, Prince was a funny one, My ex-girlfriend used to. She still does. Prince is her everything.
Right.
But Prince was an amazing musician. He was an amazing, hands down. But in the sense that he had the fame, and he was dealing with all the aspects of the music industry. But then he wanted to play. Mm-hmm. So then he was like, okay, we did this gig. I'm not in his mind, so I don't know what he thought, but it seemed like that to me. Like, we played this show, and we did really well, and it was really organized. But now we're getting, we have a drink or something, and we smoke a joint. I don't know what he did, Now we're feeling all right, and now we want to play some more. But we want to play as in, we come in and we play with no agenda except for the fact of being out there and playing music. And that's very inspiring. And I guess to tie this in with what we're doing here, I mean, not to compare myself with Prince.
You can get away with it. Why not?
I don't know.
He's not listening.
Well, I think he is. His ears were so big that he probably is from beyond the grave. But bless him. But I think like that. These experiences, listening to people, and just being interested in the way to celebrate life through music and spirituality. That's an important thing. The way people connect together is also beyond the business of trying to make a buck and appearing. We're talking about all these places in Paris which are great. It can be hit or miss. I mean, there's great musicians coming through after hours. I mean, but sometimes, it's like any job, you come on and you have to do the job, there's a date and
sure
you have to do it. But then the music just oozes beyond that, and the music is to me, in my mind, it's always been like this, for all the people. I mean, anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. It's for all the people, as many people as possible. Like, if you're playing well and there's something strong happening, a kid, someone who's never listened to music, someone who loves jazz, someone who likes other styles and hates jazz, if you're playing well, if your band is playing well, they come on and they show up and they get a vibration through it, and that puts them in a different kind of streak. So basically, to answer your question, there's a lot of jazz musicians in Paris. If you're coming to Paris, definitely go to the after hour Duc des Lombards when it reopens, hopefully soon, because that's a great place to go, where you have a melting pot of all the people who finish their gig at midnight and then go to the Duc des Lombards.
Right.
The American musicians that are coming through town, that want to go have a drink and check out the scene.
It finishes really late there, right?
4 a.m.
4 a.m. That's beyond my bedtime. But I went and saw what we talked about before I pressed record. A mutual friend of ours, rest in peace, Lawrence Lowleathers, was there.
Oh, yeah.
And that was late.
You were tying this... it's a good moment to tie this into the conversation, because I have to say to all of you people listening to it that Oliver and I met through Shakespeare and Company, where Oliver, came to us and with his book, and because I also work as a bookseller, and his book is doing a great thing. People are really enjoying his book, and then we were thinking about the next step, and we were sitting at the cafe. It was a couple of days ago. We're talking about jazz, about Paris, and everything. And Oliver told me, I met this guy who was playing basketball in Paris, and he was like, if I remember correctly, you were saying, we're all broke or something, and he's like, well, I'm not broke. I have the chance of being this Grammy nominated jazz drummer, And then I'm like, oh yeah, who is that? Because does he live in Paris? Because if he does, I must know him, because it's a small network.
Right.
And then you said, Lawrence Lowleathers. And then I was like, oh, man. And Lawrence Lowleathers was, man, he was a great, beautiful person, an amazing musician. And it happened that he moved to Paris a few years ago, and his vibe is, as a human, has connected a lot of people to it, including myself. And he was someone that, we played together quite a bit, and I really liked that guy. There was something, musically and humanly. And then we talked about the fact that he, in very mysterious circumstances, he was gone about, I think, 1 year and a half ago.
Crazy.
Yeah, and we did this, and like the community, the jazz, actually the Duc des Lombards, we did this great evening where it was organized by a good friend of mine who plays on my record, actually, Fred Nardin, and another friend of mine, Jérôme Portal. Beautiful people, beautiful musicians that are very active on the jazz scene today, who are kind of have a sort of a residency at the Duc des Lombards, and who played with Lawrence a lot, both of them, and who liked him a lot, and they organized this evening for him as a tribute, to his musicianship and musicality, and about 40 musicians were there that night. It lasted, it lasted until 5 in the morning.
Really?
Yeah, we played some really good music, and it was beautiful.
What about I'm not an expert on jazz. I feel like it's maybe got a higher, I don't know what the word is, but an entry level to get into it. You know, like pop music is everywhere you hear. Rock and roll, it's at every evening, every band plays it. It feels to me that jazz maybe takes people longer to get into.
Yeah.
Why is that?
That's an interesting question. It's hard to answer that question. I think, first of all, jazz is a very complex music. I think jazz is, well, Duke Ellington used to call jazz American music, if I'm not mistaken. It's like American classical music. It's with jazz you've got, as I said before, a compressed history where, you know, in classical music, you know, people are, even if you're not an expert in classical music, you know that it starts vaguely very, 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 very early on, and then there's a whole span of music that develops, and sometimes linked to painting and to pre-war, post-war, you know, and we got a little bit of a vision about that. Well, the jazz is a compressed way, like America has, you know, kind of had this kind of speeded up history.
Yeah.
And jazz is that, and jazz is very complex. Like, for example, you know, something that always baffles me is that the jazz greats, like, I mean, there's a lot of them, and probably a lot I'm forgetting, but if we're talking about the jazz greats, like, I mean, Louis Armstrong, of course, and Duke Ellington, and, of course, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, and so on and so forth. There's so many of them. Charles Mingus. These people were doing like a really, 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 really intricate music, and it's like, if I take John Coltrane, who's, I mean, all of these guys have been on my mind. I have to. My heart goes to Billie Holiday, I must say, but that's another conversation. That's another
podcast.
Yeah, that's another podcast. But you know, if you listen to John Coltrane, I was talking to my father the other day, who's French, very learned man, about painting, literature for sure, music less so. And you know, I was talking about John Coltrane, and I was baffled to see that he didn't know the extent of John Coltrane's music, as someone like that is one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. I mean, it's just, that's it. It's like, you know, people talk about Jackson Pollock, and they talk about Rothko, and they talk about Picasso, and of course. But, I mean, John Coltrane is right up there. Just to compare painting and music. It's like, there's no, you know, I mean, it's the power of a musician like this is just, I don't even have words for it. So is Duke Ellington, so is the people I've quoted before. I was just thinking about Coltrane because he was on my mind. And it's uncanny, and Thelonious Monk, of course, and it's uncanny that I feel like you walk on the street, for example, and you see people around, you know, they go to museums and maybe they like to buy books, and you ask them, do you know John Coltrane? So some will say yes, at least by name. But a lot of people, Thelonious Monk, people will like, who? And that is something that always baffled me, you know, because these are the people, to go back to your question, master of digression that I am, this is the way to go into jazz, to listen to the jazz greats, like the power of what was expressed through it, which was artistic, it was aesthetic, but it was spiritual, and it was also, I suppose, I mean, at least at one point, political as well. It's a huge thing, you know. I mean, it's like, ask any musician. The
Picasso of music, Coltrane. Why is there not a Coltrane museum in the Marais?
Well, there's a Coltrane church in, I don't want to say in Connery, because I can't remember where it is exactly, but imagine that, like, because Coltrane was Coltrane's went cold turkey because he was an addict at some point, and then he decided to devote his music to curing people.
Right.
And I can tell you that his music, if you put it on and you listen to the right records, will do that to you. Like, spiritually, it will curate. It will do something to you. And then followers were so. in awe with the genius that he was. There's I don't know if it's in Alabama. Don't quote me on this.
Right.
I can't remember. There's this church. Imagine that. That's so funny. And there's all these priests dressed up as, what you imagine a priest like. And they're all playing saxophones. And all playing like do-dee, do-dee, which is Love Supreme. Do-dee, 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 do-dee. And they're all playing this thing like this kind of... It's just crazy to think about. But it's that powerful. It's like there's a John Coltrane church, in America.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So speaking of America, there's something I want to ask you about jazz, and I have no idea how you're going to react. But I think a lot of...
Calmly, I hope so.
When it comes to jazz and American pop and pop culture, this film La La Land had scenes set in Paris. I wonder, a whole lot of new jazz fans maybe have connected Paris to the music. What was the Paris jazz community reaction to that?
I mean, the guy who did La La Land, he did Whiplash, and he did this Netflix, I can't remember what it's called, this recent Netflix series,
right,
which I watched. I mean, honestly, to me, this person is very talented filmmaker, and he's got his own take on whatever music he likes, but it's not... I mean, it's good because it brings people, to gather around the music. So I suppose, that's definitely a great thing, rather than people not listening to any. But it's not really made... I mean, I don't know who did the music, and, but it's not made by a jazz musician. It's made by a very good composer. I can't remember the name.
I feel like this is a very diplomatic way of saying you didn't quite like the movie.
It's not really so much that. It's more like... It's not so much that. It's more like... When you take a notion like jazz, which is, for me, but not just for me, for the community, such an important thing, it's something you live by, and it's a way of life, and often you're a bit of an outcast in society because you love jazz, and it's a bit... People don't really know how to relate to it. For some reason, it's a complex thing, but the culture of it... It's not very known to a lot of people, which I think it should. I think it really should. I mean, I may be naive, but I think people really digging music really helps.
What if we were to end as we're running out of time and the sun's setting right onto the Notre Dame there? And I'm not making this up, folks. It's about...
No, it's true.
200 meters in front of us now.
It's beautiful.
Bathed in the beautiful... Were you here when it burned, by the way?
I was. We were right in front of the bookshop.
Oh, wow.
Showing the flames. It was surrealist.
Really?
Oh, man. It was such a surrealist scene. It was right there. On a Monday, I think it was the first week of Easter.
Yeah.
And it was just like...
What happened? Were you working in the bookstore?
Yeah. One of my colleagues was like, man... come here. And I thought there was a problem with the customer, and he looked pretty pale. Really? So I thought, oh man, I'm gonna have to deal with that. And he's like, Notre Dame is burning. And I was like, what? And then we stepped out, and so everything, the smoke, the flames.
So when he said that, I assumed that the fire hadn't really gone crazy yet. It must have just started. Or? Because it burned for hours.
Yeah, I mean, when he said that, we saw the smoke and then the flames. Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah, and then that flame, like where we're standing now, the flame came up behind those big towers, sort of, and that was the most dramatic part of it all.
Yeah, actually, David, my friend, and the bookshop manager with Sylvie Whitman, actually, I called him up, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, man. It's like, we gotta close. He's like, all right, I'll be right around. And he saw the flesh, the spire. Yeah, just he came. He was in such an emotional state, and he actually coming the way he was coming from. He saw it just collapse just right in front of his eye. And I mean, it's a huge symbol for Paris.
Yeah,
for sure.
It has been for like 1,000 years.
Yeah, but it's still standing,
and it looks amazing.
It does.
That brings me. I digress as well. But I wanted to end on this note. Imagine there's someone, perhaps like me, who doesn't listen to a lot of jazz but would like to give it a shot. Can you give me a sort of a gateway I was going to say gateway drug, but you know what I mean? Like
gateway drug sounds perfect for jazz musicians.
Okay. So what's the easy way into it? How do you easy way into jazz?
Well, I'll tell you very easily. I mean, this is not just to talk about what I'm doing these days, but the gateway into jazz is to come down to places like what we're doing here at the bookshop. This is where we're trying to connect tying the music with the life picking up again, and this beautiful place like the Shakespeare and Company, that we're trying to just connect things together. Come down or check out check out what we're doing online, and if you can, come and meet the people, talk to the people, listen to the music. With people playing simply from kind of away from the business side of things, just expressing the music because that's the way of living. And then ask questions, ask about records, and and people. I mean, I'll tell you a few records, but my friends here who are packing up their instruments would tell you their own records, and then
Let's start with the easy one. What's the name of your record?
My own record.
Yeah.
Oh, it's called Play It Gentle.
Play It Gentle.
Yeah, actually.
Alex Freiman.
Yeah, that's it. It's Play Gentle. I recorded that one in 2017. I'm preparing another one, which I don't know what it's going to be called, but it's going to show a more of a feisty side of myself, which is very much in me these days, for many different reasons, fellas. And but the one I recorded, it's more of the gentle side of me, and I still listen it with a lot of pleasure, which is a difficult thing to do when you're a musician, to listen back on what you do. So I was quite happy with that fact, and people seem to enjoy it very much as well, and to get the gentle vibe about it. So.
Cool. And can people buy it online and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's available. You can. Yeah, it is. It's available through. Actually, it's available. The simplest thing is through the Shakespeare and Company website. It's up on there, but it's also available on iTunes and so forth and so on.
What they can find it in the Shakespeare and Company and buy my book while they're at it. Get the double package.
Oh yeah,
do it. Send us in a picture. Let us know.
Yeah, we'll do a special deal.
Yeah. The jazz and literature.
Yeah.
Meeting in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, support. I mean, these are the right things to be supporting, I think, right now.
I think you're right. And on that note, I'll leave you to your evening. You got your guitar.
I do.
You got a beer.
I do.
That's the perfect way to spend the evening, right?
Well, my beer is empty, and I tell you one last anecdote is one time I played at this wedding at a friend of mine's who insisted that I played, and I said yes because a friend. I wasn't too comfortable doing a private event at a friend's wedding for different reasons, and we started playing, and his mother, class international, dressed in classe internationale, stood before us, and she was like, I don't know anything about jazz, but one thing I know is that the glass of jazz musicians should never be empty.
Alex.Guitar Freiman. You can find that in the show notes. Alex.Guitar Freiman. We'll also have all the links to the places that we mentioned and so on. But if you want to get the information from every single thing in this episode, the transcript is available, and we've linked everything. We've added pictures and we've linked everything. It's in the style of like a newspaper, the whole episode. Transcript. I could say any word. Eddie has to put it in. Eddie, my brother, who does the graphic design. Bobbly boo, bobbly dobbly do, doo doo ba doo ba, whoop, doo ba doo ba ba. There you go. It's a challenge for you, Eddie. Your Patreon membership is what keeps everything spinning. Patreon.com/The Earful Tower. The other thing, at Shakespeare and Company, the bookshop where Alex works, you can find all our children's books. As I record this, they're in the window. And what we've been doing is we've been topping them up with signed copies of our new one, Grace the Giraffe in Paris. So you can make a beeline to that bookshop to get a signed copy. I don't believe there are signed copies anywhere else in Paris at the moment. And you can also pick up Kylie the Crocodile in Paris and Roger the Liger in Paris there too. That'll do it for me. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you find the jazz club. Send me a picture if you make it. Otherwise, I'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks so much for listening. Merci beaucoup and au revoir.